Alright. That's what I'm talking about. So... Alright. Oh, what? Why do these... Whoa. Well, to be fair, that's not the worst of things that could go off. Alright, alhamdulillah wa kafah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada, wa man bihudahum ihtada, وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juanying Layth, bienvenidos a todos, Bakhair Ragale people, Khushamadid and Swagatam. So, alright, what is going on? What is going on, people? What are the fitan and fasad saying? What are the... Let me try and stand these up for the epic tragedies that we're about to cover on tonight's show. Well, let's see what questions people have submitted. Do submit your questions. I was trying to go live yesterday and I couldn't come here, and my my little devil Zara had it must have been her, I mean, I can't, and wrecked everything. Damaged the whole damn thing. And so anyway, I've got it all fixed and replaced, whatever was necessary. So people, what is going on? I'll wait for a few people to tune in. God. Mal Jadid, people, Mal Jadid. How would you respond to an atheist who said, who created the creator? Alright, let's come back to that question. People. It's a bit of a heavy one to get straight into. You know, I don't want them to say, you know, you didn't ease us into this. So, shay'an fa shay'an, tadrijiyan, people, tadrijiyan. Sheikh Al-Andalus, Allahu Akbar. Like what the great companion Sahaba Ammar did. Did you get the pint glass from your local? Hell yeah, from my local. This is it, people. Like, contaminate it with a... Shall I mix it up? Whilst people are coming, huh? Let them... Alright, let's see. What was it that Zouk said? That मुंह से छुटती नहीं ये काफिर लगी हुई. Something along those lines. Alright, people. Let me just zone back into reality. What is going on? I see the drink is to kind of like zone me in. It's in the words of, there's a famous Urdu poet, Firaq. Now, I mean, there's actually a Mirpuri poet, Firaq, as well, that I once had a clip of a close friend, Shaban, one of his relatives, reciting some of his poetry. But there's an Urdu famous Firaq, and so he has, in his words, that Haste khelte aaye the mein khane mein Firaq. That we came into this place. A mekhana is like a a wine house, a pub. I suppose pub doesn't sound as slick as the term mekhana. It sounds like super slick. So he says, Haste khelte aaye the mekhane mein firaq, sharab jab pee chuke to sanjida ho gaye. You know, that after we came here laughing and in high spirits, and after we'd had a drink, we got all serious. That what is going on? That ¿Qué está pasando? What's going down, people? What's going down? Tavern. Asif Jatji said tavern. That's a better, I suppose. Tavern. Hey, rather. So, what else is going on? Is there any mention of dinosaurs in the Quran? As in, is Allah addressing the dinosaurs in the Quran? Like saying that, Ya ayyuha dinosaurat, ta'alaw wa'aqimu salawat. Of course not. Obviously, Allah's not going to address the dinosaurs in the Quran. You see, that would be a bit hilarious. Does Allah speak of them? Is that what you mean? Well, you see, it would have been a bit irrelevant if Allah started speaking about dinosaurs in the Quran, because the people of the time would have thought, what on earth is this Quran talking about? Like, because what was it that God was supposed to say? Like, oh, by the way, وَإِنَّهُ كَانَ مِمَّا كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. That there was that, you know, from what existed before you. مَخْلُوقَاتٌ تُقَالُ لَهَا دَيْنَصُورَات. That there were these creatures we call dinosaurs. I mean, there would be no relevance for Allah to speak of dinosaurs in the Quran. Because what is the, like, what would Allah just say that, oh, by the way, there used to be creatures that existed? I think people always thought there were creatures that existed. So even in the past, like from the times, even way before the rise of Islam and the rise of Arabia, way before that, even in the Greek times and the pre-Socratic Greeks as well, people had found huge, like fossils today. I mean, today fossils, but they had found bones of certain creatures, like, let's say, the woolly mammoth, and things like this, like certain, or whether it was this, I don't know, like creatures like the saber-toothed tiger. They'd found bones, teeth, skull, remnants of certain creatures that they no longer saw around them. And they weren't dumb. I mean, sometimes we get this understanding that everybody before us was just like, you know, on this Lallu Panju mode. Oh, bones, oh. They obviously weren't stupid. They figured out that, this creature, creature, no see creature, creature, you know, they were just as intelligent as you and me. So they knew that many creatures existed before that would have been scary to them today by their standards, which their standards were similar to our standards, slightly different but similar. So yeah, so they all had some kind of an idea that certain creatures did exist, and you get some of these mufassirin writing in their tafasir that there used to be all these creatures, and Al-Mas'udi writes and about how there were all these strange creatures with two heads and all this stuff, and Ibn Kathir writes in his history that there used to be these creatures called Hin wal Bin. Gives them this, you know, that name just takes away any scary effect. Like, here comes a T-Rex, and you go, oh, it's Hin. Because it is me, Hin. And the other kind of, like, I don't know, another vicious dinosaur comes along and goes, and I am Bin. Hin and Bin. They just don't seem scary anymore, do they? It's like, you know, as opposed to like T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex. So Hin and Bin, obviously it sounds a bit... So Ibn Kathir, he spoke about Ibn Kathir spoke about these creatures that did exist before called Hin wal Bin. But this is how they were figuring it out, through remnants of bones, through things like this that they were coming across, that they could understand that, whoa. And some of these creatures were obviously huge, depending on where they lived in the world. And also, it's also quite interesting to note that even Neanderthals, I love the kind of research going on into Neanderthals and hominins before us. Neanderthals were not as dumb as we think they were. You know, we have this image that Neanderthals were like, you know, they're like another. But Neanderthals weren't like that, actually. In recent observations, so Neanderthals share 99.7% of our DNA. So not 100%, but as you can see, very close, incredibly close. 99.7. That is bloody close. I mean, compared to like chimps and things like this, which will be around the 97% mark. So 99%, 99.7%. Now, this Neanderthal thing, it's really fascinating. I was looking into what are the theories. I mean, I was once again looking into, I mean, it's an old topic, but what led to their extinction? And recent research now seems to, because the two popular theories before were that Neanderthals, either humans killed them off, Homo sapiens killed them off, or the other one was that Homo sapiens kind of subsumed them, they kind of absorbed them into us. So both of these theories, I think they have some reality on a juz'i, on a partial effect, on a partial level, but generally I don't think they led to the extinction of the entire species of Neanderthal. And in recent research, and there's a lot of documentaries out there now, they demonstrate that Neanderthals were much more sophisticated than we thought. So first of all, Neanderthals had greater brain size than us. They had I mean, I'm not saying they were necessarily more intelligent, but that theory that they had, you know, that bigger brains meant more clever or more intelligent is not true. So they had on average something like 2000 cc, cubic centimeters. That was their kind of brain size. And whereas Homo sapiens 1700, something around that kind of mark. So you can see that difference. And now an analysis of their weapons, their tools, like what they use to cut, are much stronger than Homo sapien tools. So when they've done comparison, in fact, there's one investigative study which shows that they take their spears and they use a machine to stab this kind of artificial, it's almost like a gelatine block, like it stabs it, and it can register the kind of power, the impact, and how through it can get. Now, the Neanderthal spears would outdo the human kind of, the Homo sapien spears. Their cutting tools would outperform our cutting tools, so you can see when they would, the experimenters would hold up hide like leather and they would cut it with the Homo sapien kind of tools and Neanderthals. Now there's some evidence, and there's evidence that they used some kind of paint, that they used this red thing to color themselves and things like this. So some low level of art. There's handprints of them found in certain caves in Spain and other places. Now they've also found some burial sites which show that they may have had burial, which means they may have had some low level version of religion. We know that they cared for their sick. We know that they saw to their sick. So you've got bones that have been healed, and they could have only been healed if they took care of them. So things like this now show a lot of new information. But what's fascinating is this new theory of the volcanic eruption that led to the extinction about 27 to 30,000 years ago. A huge volcano going off, so powerful, like a super volcano that goes off, erupts, that really kind of blocks out, but not the way the meteorite had done previously, but to some extent, for a few months it impacts the climate, It also poisons the air, it poisons the water right across Europe. So I believe the volcano situated around Italy, close to Italy. So this went off and it led to the extinction of all species, including the sapiens that lived in Europe. But because Homo sapiens were dispersed, they were in Central Asia, they were in Middle East, they were in Africa, they were in Asia, they were in Australia by that time as well. So the human species, our species, still survived. So I think that's really fascinating. I thought I'd... No, not the Pompeii thing. That's much recent. That's obviously just now. But we're talking about volcanic eruption that took place about 27 to 30,000 years ago. Okay, chalo, darwaza band kar. Okay. Right, so now... Right, so I thought I'd share that anyway, but that's an interesting theory, because the other theory was that we killed them all off. I think we would have killed some, and the fact that we subsumed them, as in we just kept intermingling and mating and intermingling until there were no more Neanderthals, there were just us. Although that does sound a bit like the that we basically groomed we groomed the Neanderthals into extinction, for God's sake. That doesn't really carry off on that scale. Although there was definitely some interbreeding. So most non-Africans today carry anything between 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. Alright, people, alright, let's move on, people. Speaking about DNA, for God's sake, people, I got my results. I thought I'd share this with you guys. So I'd sent them off previously to a company that came back and said, well, you're just South Asian, which I thought, duh. And then I sent it to this Indian company that came back and said, oh, you're just from the Punjab region. But then I realized, somebody told me after I mentioned it on here, somebody told me that actually they have very a poor database of global statistics, and they rate something like number 48 out of 50 websites. So you want to try like the top 5. So there was a website, MyHeritage, so I uploaded my DNA into that the data file, and they gave the results. People, brace yourselves. Right, so it came back with some interesting finds. It said, well, 75% was from around the modern day Pakistan area. So 75% it confirmed. It said, "Theek hai, you're from Pakistan, 75%, right? Nothing shocking there." But it said 13.5%, which I was like, 13.5%? It said was of listed the 3 Irish, Scottish and Welsh. I was like, huh? I've got to look into my... What put has been going on with the ancestry? And it said about 10.5% was Central Asian. So about like Turkey, Iran, whatever, Central Asia. So that was the least of them all. So I was thinking, what the hell is that about? So then I thought, of course, it must have been the goddamn East India Company in India. That one must have been, I mean, that's what it must have been, presumably. It must have been the bloody... how else would this part of the world get over there? So I suppose they were there for about 300 years. So obviously, kuch to chakkar chala hoga. There must have been something back there somewhere. But anyway, I thought I'd... it's actually quite fascinating. I think you guys should check out some of these places and do them. And it's quite... You know, and it's actually set me on a trail to uncover a lot more about my own personal family tree and everything. And I've been writing down all these extra names and finding out the lineage and everything. It's just personal journey, but amazing. And I encourage you all to do that, inshallah. Right, so what's going on, people? Yeah, somebody said during the East India Company. Yep, so I don't know. So it must have been presumably one of the women folk that got pregnant, presumably, because if it was the men, then the woman would have been elsewhere, but obviously for it to carry on, it must have been one of the... So I don't know what the naughty back hundreds of years ago in the lineage, but I guess something must have happened. So what else is going on, people? What else? What have we... So, speaking of the naughty, we've got... and speaking of the naughty women, we've got Shamima Begumm. Hey, people, Shamima Begumm. So what are our thoughts on Shamima Begumm wanting to come back to the... Now she's sitting in some camp. I want to go back. Yeah, I want to go back to the UK. So, and the news has come in just today. Breaking news. Taza tareen khabar. That the UK have revoked her citizenship. The UK are like, ja, bhaad mein ja, mar. They're like, you can do one, in other words. So she's been left to stranded, people. So what are our thoughts on this? So personally, I think, wait, drink. Zara sa drink to banta hai. Alright. So I think my thoughts are exactly the same. Bhaar mein jaye. She can go to hell, as far as I'm concerned, right? She is a joke, right? Absolute joke, people. No remorse, no kind of like regret. She's gone off to join vicious butchers, and in her I'll come to her interview, but I want to remind people something. You know, some people are seeing a picture of like a Muslim girl and they are identifying. So they're thinking like, like that could be, you know, like let's say, you know, women folk around you, girls around you, Muslim girls. I'm making it sound like there's some kind of harem over here, like, of Muslim girls. No, but I mean generally, the girls around you that you may personally know, and you're identifying, whether it's the guys or some of the girls are personally identifying, and they're thinking, well, she was young and she went and she got groomed, and I want to just stop people right there. Pause, press the pause button. And I would say, nah. This good for nothing. She is somebody, first, to make this very clear, she openly betrayed Allah and His Messenger. She has insulted them, insulted God and His Messenger, by going to kill primarily Muslims. They went over there to butcher Muslims. Because according to them, the vast majority of the Muslims are all kafirs. They were all hypocrites. According to them, we were all kafirs. Right? And we just happened to be in a different geopolitical, position. If we were over there, they would have unquestionably beheaded us. There's no two ways about that. By the time she went there, beheadings had already taken place. The propaganda was out there. The beheadings began in, I think, 2014, right? And the ISIS propaganda, she was well aware of what she was doing. And under her, while she was there, she says, I saw a head cut off, thrown in a bin. I saw, my husband would tell me about executions taking place on a daily basis. This is loss of life, people. People are being massacred whilst they relish in this stupid fantasy of some kind of caliphate that they're setting up on the blood and skulls of innocent victims. Beginning, the first thing they executed is the honor of Islam. They threw God and His Messenger under the bus to begin with. These people deserve zero compassion, right, from any faith perspective. If there's a legal argument, that's separate. That's a legal argument for could have she returned or not. But as far as a faith perspective is concerned, these people were content, they relished, they were happy, they took delight in the murder and butchering of innocent people, many of whom, most of whom, were Muslims. So have no compassion from that perspective about these people. They knew very well what they were doing. I'm glad she has not come back to this country, because I mean, first of all, then there was the legal argument. Okay, so that's just a religious thing I want to clear up. Right, so somebody said, look, let me get this right. They don't deserve mercy because they betrayed the religion. No, look, mercy from God, ठीक let them have mercy from God. I'm not stopping. Who am I to stop God? I can't stop the mercy of God. But should we show them mercy? No. These people, if the tables were turned, when the tables were turned, were butchering. They were butchering, killing, beheading, executing, destroying this deen. We have, as far as a faith perspective, we have no compassion. We do not go out of our way. I'm not saying execute her, or I'm against capital punishment. I'm not saying execute her. But, so I'm not saying to do harm to her like that. She has already met her own fate. She went there in hope of some ridiculous satanic concept of some global dominion that they will establish in the name of some caliphate. And they've met their fate. This is it. This was their fate. I mean, she's in a refugee camp. Cool, she chose it. You know, God never picked her up and threw her in some refugee camp. She got up and went there. So why should people pay for her to come back? Why? Why should other Muslims be victimized because of her? If she came back, I tell you what would have happened is it would have empowered the far right to say, so we haven't got money for our kids and this and this and this, but we've got money for extremist terrorists to feed and clothe them. If she came back, the backlash on every common Muslim would have been an actual reality. It's not something like, it would have been. The situation in the UK is tense. Brexit is a mess. The government here shouldn't be trying to bring back terrorists into this country. What the hell for? She is first and foremost our enemy. Right? She's the type of person, she and anybody of her ilk that went over there to kill innocent people. These people, if dehydrated, do not deserve to be urinated on. I'm telling you, these people deserve no. They first and foremost are the enemies of God and His messenger. So from a religious perspective, we do not do them no favors. That's as far. I'm not saying you persecute them now, like I'm not saying bomb her or shoot her or anything, but I'm saying let her be where she is. She's in some camp. Let her stay there. That's her choice. She can do whatever she wants now. I hope she's found what she went for, And this is exactly what Allah warned them in the Quran. That they will find what they've gone seeking. And this is their, how do they feel now? That, some ridiculous concept that we're going to take over the world and... Mil gaya. It's like, this is so... So have no compassion. Do not argue her course. That's what I would say. Yes, there was a slight legal argument. I acknowledge that. There was a legal argument in the sense that there was the argument that she was under 18 when she left. So, because of naivety and because of being... Was she groomed or not? Or groomed isn't the right word, but did she have advantage taken of her and she wasn't a full adult? So there was some legal argument, and I acknowledge that as a legal argument, not as a religious kind of compassionate argument, but as a legal argument. But then, in contrast with that, look at her attitude now. Her attitude was one of no regret. She said, I do not, on TV, she said, I don't regret joining ISIS. And look at what she said. She said, oh, why does Mr. Sajid Javid think that I am a threat? I don't have any weapons. And check this out. She said, and even if I do have weapons, that was her words. She said, and even if I had weapons, why would I use them? Because you're a goddamn member of ISIS, you thick. you thick good for nothing. What do you mean, why would you use them? Because you're ISIS. You know, then they say, Mufti swears. Of course you're gonna, what do you mean, why would I use them? You'd use them because you're a nutcase terrorist. What else? And so, yes, there was a little legal argument, and she could have been brought back, and I accept this legal argument, and as soon as she came back, she would have spent her life in jail. There was that legal argument, but then, to be fair, the government would have had to pay for her, bring her here, pay for her living, pay for her cost of accommodation in prison, pay for her supervision, her medical costs, they would have had to pay for. And this would have then evoked a kind of a backlash from the far right and the kind of disenfranchised people of the British public. So the general maslaha, I think, overruled that one tiny maslaha of the legal argument. So I agree with what the government, the decision they've taken. I think, hell yeah, right? You know, it's like, oh look, ask Baghdadi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, ask him for some help. Right, so she was groomed by ISIS. She wasn't groomed by ISIS, man. She knew exactly what she was doing. You know what, I don't buy into this. The propaganda was out there. They were beheading people. They were doing things. She knew that. I wonder where her friends are, by the way. They haven't asked her where, because there were 3 of the girls that left. So what is Mufti talking about right now? I'm talking about Shamima Begumm. Right. Right, views on Wahdatul. Okay, so I think that's her covered, right? So we have a decision. She's declared stateless. But you know what? In a way, the irony is that these extremists don't believe in the concept of nation states. So her being declared stateless, it kind of correlates with her beliefs. And this is why I condemn any of these extremist groups that don't go that full way, but they lend some legitimacy to these people. Groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, these kind of groups that are against states and speak of global dominion and we need a global caliphate and things like this, you have to be very wary, because these groups are like the grooming process for that. So, you know, you get onto these groups, you start having a hatred for people, you think that no nation state is legitimate in the world, all law is illegitimate in the world, we live in the land of war. You see, and then you're just a step away. The next step is, well, since we live in Dar al-Harb, naturally these are enemy combatants, these are harbiyun, and therefore we are at war with them. So this is why I have no sympathy for groups like that either. And if any of your family members are influenced by them, I would advise you to really do your best to kind of salvage the situation, to kind of bring, especially the younger people, bring them back from this kind of a concept. Don't let them get... And I've said this whole thing about Khilafah is honestly, it's a myth, okay? There's no such thing as Khilafah, and I've mentioned that even this word Khilafah that comes in all these hadiths is made up afterwards, because the word Khilafah in the time of the Arabs wasn't used with this concept. It wasn't used to mean rulership. So how could the Prophet be using this word in a hadith when the word didn't mean that in his time? Khilafah just meant something that came after. It didn't mean in any kind of, like this vicegerent or deputy role, or this is a political understanding that emerges in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. So in the Prophet's time, it didn't even exist. So how could the Prophet be speaking about it to a people who wouldn't understand it? So this is a very important question, that this concept couldn't have existed in his time. The Prophet couldn't have used that word. The Arabs knew kings, they had muluk, and they had the term wulat, walis, they had the term umara, they had the terms naqib and nuqaba, they had these kind of terms, but they never had this term of khalifa and khulafa. This is a post-Islamic part of the culture. As Islamic kingdoms emerged, they came up with these words. So the Prophet couldn't have been speaking like that. That's like if you get, if we get something from, I don't know, you're reading up something by, you could be reading anything, something by Abraham Lincoln speaking about mobile phones. If he's using the word mobile, he can't be using mobile to mean mobile phone, because mobile phones don't exist in his time. So nobody would understand what he's on about. So the Prophet can't be using the word khilafah to mean that. So that means he never used these words. So either this hadith, or these hadith that you have on khilafah, are either people reinterpreting them and putting them in, or they're entirely made up just to serve the kings of the early. Like the hadith in Bukhari, there will be 12 khulafa after me. 12 of Bani Umayyah. Yeah, right. And this is ridiculous. This hadith cannot exist, because the Prophet couldn't be speaking like that. Because then the companions, even when they came up with the word Khalifa for Abu Bakr, they came up with it. They didn't even know. They said, how about we use the word Khalifa? If the Prophet had been teaching them, they ought to say, yes, the Prophet has already told us about this. We will be using the words he taught us. He taught us the word Khalifa, we will be using the word Khalifa. They actually used different words first. They said Amir, then they said, how about we call you Khalifa? So this is all a made-up myth, and it's done to kind of give Muslims today some kind of false nostalgia and false hope that the reason we're suffering is because we haven't got a caliphate. If we had a caliphate, everything would be rosy and, it'd be dandy and everything would be brilliant. And the truth is,